Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
I love my intro music. Happy Friday, everybody. It is a fabulous Friday out there, and it is 9 a.m. So you know what that means. This is our weekly Friday Friend Show here with Deb Burton, Executive Director of RI Elder Info. And every Friday, we come on and talk to people who have information that you or someone you know needs to know about. We've got a super important topic today. So please make sure you hit the like button, the share button, all those social media cues saying, hey, you got to check this out because we're having a really important conversation today that a lot of folks just don't know this kind of information. So please make sure you share it out there. Now, as you all know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we would not be able to bring you Friday Friends without the support of our sponsors. So a huge thank you to Point 32 Health Foundation and the Rhode Island Foundation. Thank you to Neighborhood Health, as well as United Healthcare and Oak Street Health, England Studios, 321 Media, a wide variety of our individual sponsors and donors, and absolutely Washington Trust and McCarthy Law. It would not be possible to bring Friday Friends without all of their support. So thank you to all of them. So my guest today is my friend Daphne Hamilton from McCarthy Law. Come on up, Daphne.
Hello.
How are you? I'm so glad you had time today to meet with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah. So can you share with everybody a little bit about your background and how you became interested in retirement planning as an attorney?
Absolutely. So, as Deb spoke, I'm an associate attorney at McCarthy Law, and we primarily focus on estate planning, elder law, and real estate transactions. So we're really honing in on retirement planning in the sense that we want to be protecting, our clients and their loved ones for both the long-term care perspective, as well as probate avoidance for if something were to happen to, those individuals. I have a story that's very similar to most of my clients and then to my coworkers at McCarthy Law as far as my passion for this area. I saw my parents be caregivers for 3 of my grandparents. So whether it be assisted living or nursing home care, specifically with my grandfather, he was diagnosed with dementia and psychosis. And my mom's an attorney as well. He was a very savvy business owner. And things happen. Your health changes. And for all that you've planned through retirement, can all kind of go away pretty quickly if you get a major healthcare diagnosis. And from his perspective, I was able to see how proactive planning didn't assist in that situation. And I want to be able to help support my clients that the more proactive we can be and open and honest conversations when you're on that younger stage of life is going to help you throughout that plan as you age.
I think sometimes it's hard for folks to have that open and honest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when we're thinking about retirement planning, I think we think of like the financial investment piece. And a lot of times that estate planning is intertwined with the retirement planning. Can you explain how these two areas really kind of intersect and why it's important to address both in a comprehensive way?
Definitely. So I think that there is such an intersection because one affects the other. If you have invested time, energy, money into appropriately planning for your retirement, whether it be stocks, 401ks, IRAs, even if you have the luxury of working with a financial advisor to help you with that plan really isn't going to be set in stone and proactive for you if we're not making sure that things are either titled correctly. So from a probate avoidance perspective, if we have beneficiary designations, do we need to retitle assets into a trust if you were to pass away? So that's from the probate perspective. And then from the long-term care perspective, as you know, people are living a lot longer than they were 10, 20 years ago. So the likelihood that you are going to need more escalated care into retirement is very likely. I think that we all think of retirement as lounging on a beach, being able to have access to, luxuries that you wouldn't have when you were working. But if you're 85, 90 years old, you're still considered retired and kind of, chipping away at that retirement building that you've put into stone. So kind of having in the back of your mind things like long-term care insurance, protecting against, Medicaid asset liens, and maybe even putting some money aside and doing more planning for things like in-home care or assisted living care. Whatever goal is yours towards those end stages of your life is huge.
Now, you mentioned that part of it can be for Medicaid planning. And I know that a lot of times people just don't understand that Medicare does not cover long-term care.
No.
So is that planning as far as estate planning and retirement planning, is that something that you're seeing more people take action in a timely way in the event that they find, oh my goodness, I just, I got that diagnosis? Or should people really be thinking about this maybe younger than they currently are?
Yeah. So I think in that question, it's very easy, as someone of my age to plan for retirement. I'm, funding my 401k. I should have things in the back of my head, maybe not yet, but thinking about that extra long-term care piece. We start conversations with clients, close to that retirement age, even, around 10 years before, around age 50, just to have it be on their horizon. And so that they're willing to talk about that conversation more into the future. Because if you're the most proactive in thinking about maybe irrevocable trust planning or putting in powers of attorney to help you in case you are incapacitated, the younger that you're doing that and the more chance that you're in a state where you have the most capacity and the most amount of information and detail to your plan is the best. If we're in a stage where maybe you did just get a diagnosis or your spouse did for dementia or Alzheimer's, we can still do that planning. It's going to be more of an emergency situation. And that's where we're seeing a lot of our clients that are in that emergency, that they're wishing that they started that conversation earlier. And so for adult caregivers that are watching their parents go through this emergency, that's where we're seeing a lot of clients coming back saying, I just saw our parents go through this. We need to plan for our kids too.
Absolutely. And I have to say, that kind of planning, I feel, is almost like the last time you want to have to go out to try to buy a new car is when you're broken down on the side of the road. You don't want to wait until it's a crisis.
Yes.
And so this kind of retirement planning is really important to have earlier. And I like the fact that you said even as early as in your 50s, because I think that's when a lot of people are beginning to experience, seeing care that their loved ones need as they're aging and thinking like, Now with this kind of retirement planning, does it allow the individual to really get their needs and wishes set in writing so that they can have done what they want done and really kind of create that control and independence as they get older?
Definitely. And I think that that's one of the major benefits of having that proactive planning before it becomes an emergency. We say to our clients frequently that if you don't have a plan written down, set in stone, the government has one for you. And for most people, including myself, I'm not comfortable with that. There are statutes that say what happens to your assets and who receives them if you don't have a will, if you don't have a trust, if you have nothing written down. So even if you have a verbal agreement with one child that they're going to receive a bank account, if you don't have them as a beneficiary, or if you don't have documentation, whether it be a will or a trust to say that, then your plan really isn't going to be executed. I know firsthand it's not the loveliest of topics to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about death, but the only thing that's certain in life are death and taxes. We talk about both, in our area of law. And I think that it's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is going to make you more set in a path that, whether it's your children, your loved ones, whoever is going to be there on the back end of you passing away or becoming incapacitated, it's going to be a huge burden shift and a relief for them. So if you're able to, at a younger age, think about something that you know isn't going to happen 20, 30 years from now, it's a lot easier to talk about that.
Exactly, exactly. And I would imagine this kind of planning kind of stops that sibling bickering of mom liked me best. No, I was mom's favorite.
Yes. Yeah. And I say, I kind of play devil's advocate in the sense that I'm going to give you a whole slew of different hypotheticals that either we've seen in practice or that I think this might be happening. And if you're being as detailed as possible, even with things like, real estate, having a right to reside for a child or buyout language, just to make sure that you're trying to mitigate as much conflict as possible, knowing that there's only so much reach beyond the grave you can have, and that there needs to be some, push with that. But if you want to be detailed and have these conversations, you are going to be avoiding a lot of conflict of your kids or your loved ones wondering, I don't know what mom and dad wanted. What am I supposed to do here? Even for things like, funeral planning. So talking about burial or cremation. Another topic that nobody loves to talk about, but if you have something set in writing that says, all right, if something happens, you're going to go to this funeral home. I want to be cremated. I want my ashes here, so that there isn't that fight on the back end.
Yes. And cremation is one of those things that you can't undo. So yeah, you want to make sure you have all those things in place. And there's so many different pieces and little details that can go into the planning to really ensure that you get what you want. What are some of the most overlooked legal aspects of retirement planning that people tend to just neglect? They don't notice until it's like,
Yeah. So there's a few. I think the first one that we've seen is not seeking out an advisor. So I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to be managing your accounts for you. I can only set you up in a direction to suggest that maybe you should have, somebody that's non-biased, just looking at what you have for retirement planning. I think that at least starting that conversation to see if it's something that you're interested in, so that they're able to show you, how does my retirement look? What are my goals? What are my expenses? So definitely, seeking a professional when it makes sense for you and your family. Second portion is double checking titling on accounts. So the most common accounts that are going through probate, which is what happens if you have an asset in just your name alone without a beneficiary, are bank accounts. Most banks don't have you set up a beneficiary when you first open that account. Unlike life insurance or retirement, that's really one of the first things that you're deciding when you're opening that account. So double checking whom you want to inherit those specific assets once you've passed. And then similarly, talking through with your spouse, if you have one, or talking through with your family and loved ones about real estate titling. So if you're interested in maybe thinking about Medicaid protections for that real estate, whether it be a life estate transfer, a transfer to an irrevocable trust, or making sure that we have this next succession for that specific deed titling.
And those are all kinds of things that you can help them with there at McCarthy Law, right?
Definitely. So we always, during consultations, again, we kind of start that conversation around 50, closer to retirement, when we're thinking about long-term care planning, just showing you your options. At the end of the day, it is always the client's decision for whatever plan they're moving forward with. I'm there to assist you and to give you those options and help facilitate your plan with which one you're choosing. But we're frequently, discussing, is long-term care a major conflict for you? Is that something that you're worried about? Are you worried about probate avoidance? Do we have an issue with the child with maybe, a supplemental needs trust or a substance abuse issue? So all of that gets kind of picked away at during a consultation with us.
Got it. And it feels like these days I hear the statements more often of mom's husband, dad's wife, where the couple, mom and dad are no longer together, and now it's a blended family, and each has respective children, et cetera, with their own thoughts about how things ought to go.
Yeah.
Are you able to put things in place to make sure that assets are protected and transferred in the way that the individual wants? Or is that something that in a blended family, there's just kind of like the government says it goes XYZ?
That's a great question. So I would say a lot of our clients actually are blended families. I think that that's just been the turn of events, as far as what, our communities look like now, whether it be you have children together or you have children from separate relationships. And those are the hardest conversations to have, because a lot of times that's the most uncomfortable, thinking about your children versus my children. How are we going to provide for them? So it depends on the specific, couple, if they're comfortable having joint representation and wanting to plan jointly. We talk about some pros and cons of doing that, such as the ability to make changes if one spouse had passed away. But most of the time, it would be recommended that you each have your own plan to make sure that your autonomy and your specific wishes are being followed through. And that is definitely something, in terms of the government having a plan for you, that wouldn't end in your favor if you want to have that productive planning between multiple children, and spouses in that situation.
That's good. Now, if somebody has made these plans previously, how often should they look at it again to kind of reflect, to make sure that it's still up to date?
Mm-hmm. So as far as my suggestion, what I would hope that our clients are doing is they're looking at this annually. So we would send out this annual care packet that says, it's a checkup. Did any of these things happen in your life? Whether it's a major life change, did you open a new bank account? So we need to retitle an asset. Did you have a birth of a grandchild? Did, God forbid, you have a death in the family, or a new diagnosis that we want to be planning for? We've structured our clients with care plans now. So we're actually involved annually to make sure that your plan that you've invested money, time, resources into is still going to be valid and proper in the next 10, 20 years. And if we don't have that conversation at least annually, if not every couple of years, then your plan that you created 20 years ago when your kids were 5 and 6 years old is not going to be the same plan down the line. Things change and they happen very quickly, whether it's changes in the law, changes in your familial life. So we're just there to be able to help that.
That is awesome. And if individuals do need to, say, plan for that long-term care expense, if they need the Medicaid planning, you can help them with those too, right?
Mm-hmm. So proactive planning is always ideal. That's where we're setting up our clients in the right trajectory, that maybe we're not at that escalated level. But we also do emergency planning, which is how we're able to provide clients with the resources to be proactive, because we've seen either what went wrong or what we should be working on prior to that. So we do, Medicaid spend downs, whether it be preserving assets prior to that Medicaid application. We physically apply for Medicaid if we do have an individual in a nursing home. And then we also have more emergency planning for people that want to remain at home. If that's your goal, that we want to protect you from not needing to move, and if you can age safely in place, but you just need some in-home care, we have an elder care coordinator who's able to take a bird's eye view at your home situation, give you a care plan to help you stay at home as long as possible.
There's a lot of research that's been done by AARP and a variety of other organizations that says the vast majority of people do want to be able to age at home. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that folks necessarily have that conversation about how that's going to be done, and not only how is it going to be done, but how is it going to be paid for. So I think Definitely. That's one of those things that becomes more like little bit by little bit, the care needs are increasing until it reaches kind of a tipping point. And it's like, oh my God, and that ounce of prevention is always worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. And especially from the caregiver perspective too, I mean, that is a full-time career. Yeah. For someone to be caring for an aging parent, a spouse, whether it's overnight stays or medication, making sure that their meals are being met. And, it's very difficult for families now in today's society to be able to leave work to do so and to be a full-time caregiver for an aging parent, or spouse. The reality is that most families have 2 individuals that are still working. And so for them to be able to feel as though they can be heard as a caregiver and be relieved from some of the tasks that can be shifted over to someone coming into the home, or maybe, some extra community resources that, Deb, I'm sure you have a whole slew of for, just to relieve some of that pressure, because we can't forget about the caregiver in all of this, because they're also at risk for more health concerns if they're being put on the back burner.
Absolutely. And, sometimes it's a situation where an individual has been the caregiver for their loved one at home for a really long time, and the caregiver gets sick. And that's when you really see the, oh my goodness. So if people have questions, if they want to reach out to you, what is the best number for them to reach you?
So our main office number is 401-541-5540. We do offer discovery calls for potential clients. So if you don't necessarily know if it's something that you're interested in and just want to schedule a 15-minute consultation to kind of talk through some of those issues before you're officially scheduled for an estate planning or elder law consultation, that's kind of a no stress way to see if this would be the right fit for you.
And so with McCarthy Law, they can do the estate planning as well as any of their other planning that they need for, if all goes as planned, aging well.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you've migrated into a care plan, that you have that access to our elder care coordinator, even if you don't need it now, but you just want to bounce some ideas off of her for what a safe, home situation looks like, whether you need to remove some rugs or restructure, certain aspects of your home, that we're able to best provide for your family, still being invested in your plan.
That is awesome. It's just, there's so many different aspects, from the legal aspects, the financial, the planning, the caregiver, the emotional pieces. It just, sometimes it can feel like a lot for people. And I'm really glad that your team is able to really touch on some of these things that are really nuanced and super, super sensitive.
Yes.
So, yeah, you guys must be incredibly busy.
We are busy, but we make time for every single client that comes in that door. We all love what we do, which makes a huge difference. I can't imagine not being in an area where, we're so heavily hearted into it. So I'm just glad that we're able to be in a firm that supports that.
Oh, I'm so glad that you had the time to take out of your schedule to come on Friday Friends and chat with us today, because this is all the pieces of information that so many people are really struggling. They're really struggling to get this information. So I'm glad you were able to come on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. So Daphne Hamilton, wonderful resource over at McCarthy Law. I really do encourage you to give them a call, because there are so many different pieces, from the legal pieces, the financial pieces, to the emotional care planning pieces. And they've got a great team over there. So give them a call at the 541-5540. They can give you a quick 15-minute call to see what might or might not work best for you, and at least get you started on the path. We all have to start someplace, right? Of course. So I am glad that you are all able to join me today for Friday Friends. Quick little programming note. On Saturday, August 17th from 10 to 2, we are hosting our 5th annual Calling All Veterans Day event. It's going to be taking place at the CB Museum and Memorial Park over in North Kingstown, known best for being right by the Daves and the Coles. So I hope you all come on down August 17th. So I'm a little early in announcing it, but get it on your calendars now, because you don't want to miss it. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. In the meantime, be well and be kind.
If you liked this video, please follow us on social media and subscribe on YouTube. For more information, visit rielderinfo.com or call 401-585-0509. If you have any questions, email deb@rielderinfo.com.